Congratulations! You just bought a $500,000 house. You also just signed up for 30 years of financial slavery. In 2026, the bank doesn't want your mortgage, they want your soul. Look at this house. Granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, and a yard big enough for a golden retriever. This is what you were promised, right? The American dream. Work hard, get the 30-year fixed rate, and you've made it. But here's the secret your real estate agent is too terrified to tell you. The American dream has been weaponized. It's no longer a path to wealth. It's a trap designed to keep you working a job you hate until the year 2056. If you're making the median income and staring at a $500,000 listing, you aren't an investor. You're a host for a parasite called compound interest. Your parents tell you to just get into the market. They bought their house in 1990 for $150,000 while making $50,000 a year. Their house cost 3 times their income. In 2026, that same starter home is $500,000, but the median household income is barely $84,000. That's 6 times your income. The math isn't just tight, it's broken. We have normalized financial insanity. We've rebranded drowning in debt as adulting. You're being told to compete with BlackRock and institutional investors for a 1,200 square foot box that was built in the 70s and still has lead paint under the modern gray flip. Let's talk about the money you'll never see again. You think your $500,000 house costs $500,000? Wrong. First, there's PMI, private mortgage insurance. Because you didn't have $100,000 in cash to put 20% down, the bank charges you a fee every month to protect them from you. It's a poverty tax. You're literally paying a fine for not being rich enough. Then come the property taxes. In states like Texas or New Jersey, you don't own your land, you rent it from the government. If you stop paying your taxes, see how fast the dream home gets taken away. Add in homeowners insurance, which is skyrocketing because of climate risks, and suddenly your affordable $2,800 mortgage is actually a $4,400 monthly bleed. This is where it gets psychological. When 50% of your take-home pay goes to a roof over your head, you lose your freedom of speech. Can you tell your boss to shove it when they ask you to work weekends? No. Can you quit that toxic job to start your own business? No. Can you take a risk on a new career? Absolutely not. You are now a prisoner to the monthly payment. You are one check engine light or one medical copay away from a total mental breakdown. You're living in a $500,000 house, but you're eating ramen over those granite countertops because your bank account is a ghost town. But Sky, you say, renting is throwing money away. Is it? Is paying $100,000 in pure interest to a bank over 5 years building wealth? Or is it just paying for the bank CEO's next yacht? Before you sign that 30-year death warrant, we need to do the math that your mortgage broker skipped. Because in 2026, the difference between a homeowner and a financial slave is a very thin line. Let's stop talking about feelings and start talking about cold, hard math. In the US, we have a weird obsession with the purchase price. I bought a house for $500,000. No, you didn't. You bought a debt obligation that's going to cost you closer to $1.2 million by the time you're done. The bank isn't your friend. They are a business, and their product is your future labor. When you look at a $500,000 listing in 2026, you aren't just looking at a mortgage. You're looking at a multi-headed hydra that's designed to bleed your bank account dry every single month. First head of the hydra, PMI. In America, we've been sold the lie that 5% down is enough. But if you don't have $100,000 sitting in a high-yield savings account for a 20% down payment, the bank considers you a risk. So, what do? They charge you private mortgage insurance. This is the ultimate poverty tax. You are literally paying $200 to $400 every month for insurance that protects the bank, not you. If you lose your job in default, PMI doesn't save your credit, it just makes sure the bank gets paid while you're out on the street. It's money burned in a furnace. No equity, no tax benefit, just a fine for not being rich enough yet. Second head, property taxes. This is the part that kills the I'm an owner ego. In many US metros, property taxes are 1.5% to 2.5% of the home's value. On a $500,000 house, that's another $10,000 a year. That's $833 a month you pay just for the privilege of the police and fire department not ignoring your zip code. Third head, homeowners insurance. Have you seen the rates in 2026? Between Florida's hurricanes, California's wildfires, and the general climate chaos premiums, insurance has skyrocketed 40% in the last 3 years. You're looking at $300 a month minimum. Add it up, $2,850 for the loan, $300 for PMI, $833 for taxes, and $300 for insurance. We are already at $4,283 a month, and we haven't even turned on the lights yet. Fourth head, maintenance. In the US, we have the 1% rule. You should budget 1% of the home's value every year for when things inevitably break. That's $5,000 a year, or $416 a month. When you're a renter and the AC dies in a Texas July, you call the landlord and it's their problem. When you're an owner and that compressor fails at 4 p.m. on a Friday, that's an $8,000 bill that lands squarely on your chest. If you don't have that cash, and let's be honest, most Americans don't, you put it on a credit card at 24% interest. Now your affordable house just became a high-interest debt spiral. The bank says you're approved if your debt-to-income (DTI) ratio is under 43%. This is a trap. The bank doesn't care if you can afford to eat, they only care if you can afford to pay them. If you make $150,000 a year, your take-home pay after Uncle Sam takes his cut and you put a measly 5% into your 401k is roughly $8,500 a month. If $4,700 of that is going into your house, including utilities, you are spending 55% of your actual wealth on 4 walls and a roof. That leaves you $3,800 for 2 car payments. The US average is now $700 per month per car, gas, groceries, health insurance, and maybe, if you're lucky, a Netflix subscription. You aren't building equity. You are one flat tire away from financial collapse. The final piece of math they hide from you is opportunity cost. If you took that $50,000 down payment and the $1,500 extra you're spending on house costs versus renting, and you threw it into a simple S&P 500 index fund, you'd likely have $2 million in 30 years with zero maintenance stress. Instead, you're betting everything on a single asset in a single neighborhood in a market that is historically overvalued. You're not an investor, you're a gambler with a 30-year ticket. The math is brutal because it doesn't have emotions. It doesn't care about your dream kitchen. It only cares about the bottom line. And in 2026, for the average American, the bottom line is bleeding red. You've got the keys. You've posted the photo on Instagram with the caption #homeowner. Your friends are hitting the like button, but they can't see the golden handcuffs locking around your wrists. In the US, we've normalized a lifestyle where your house is your master and you are the servant. You don't own a home, you own a debt-fueled cage that dictates every single second of your waking life. Let's talk about your job. Before the $500,000 mortgage, you had optionality. You could tell a toxic boss where to go. You could take a risk on that startup idea. You had the power to say no, but now you have to say yes to everything. Can you work this Saturday? Yes. Can we skip the annual raise this year? Yes. Can you take on 3 people's workload for the same pay? Yes. You are now a yes man because the bank doesn't care about your professional growth or your mental health. They want their $4,300 on the first of the month, or they take the roof. You've traded your spine for a granite island in a kitchen you're too tired to cook in. In your 30s and 40s, you're supposed to be in your prime. These are the years you should be traveling to Tokyo, taking your kids to the Grand Canyon, or eating at that Michelin star restaurant in NYC. Instead, your travel consists of weekly trips to Home Depot. Your luxury is buying a lawnmower that doesn't break. You've entered the lifestyle death loop. Every extra dollar you earn doesn't go to your memories or your retirement, it goes to maintaining the asset. You're house poor, which means you look rich on the outside but you're living like a monk on the inside. You're checking the price of organic eggs at Whole Foods and feeling a sting of guilt because that extra $4 could have gone toward the property tax escrow. This isn't living, it's surviving in a decorated box. And let's be real about what happens behind those freshly painted walls. In America, the #1 cause of divorce is financial stress. When you're stretched to the limit, every minor inconvenience becomes a domestic war. A $500 car repair isn't just an annoyance, it's a week-long argument with your spouse about who spent too much on Starbucks. A kid needing braces isn't a milestone, it's a financial catastrophe that keeps you awake at 2 a.m. doing mental math. The American dream promised you a sanctuary. Instead, it gave you a high-pressure cooker. You're too stressed to enjoy your partner, too exhausted to play with your kids, and too worried about the future to appreciate the present. Is a backyard really worth the cost of your peace of mind? The most terrifying part of the loop? You're stuck. If the market dips 10% in 2026, you are underwater. You can't sell the house because you owe the bank more than it's worth. You can't move for a better job in another state because you're tied to this specific zip code by a 30-year contract. You've sacrificed your mobility, the very thing that makes the American economy work, for stability that is actually an illusion. You are a prisoner of your own equity. While the world is changing and opportunities are moving, you're stuck painting a fence because you're too deep in the hole to climb out. We buy houses to impress people we don't even like, with money we don't really have, to achieve a status that doesn't actually exist. The lifestyle death loop ends only when you realize that your worth isn't measured in square footage. Wealth is the ability to wake up and say, I can do whatever I want today. But when you own a $500,000 house on a median income, your day has already been decided for you by the mortgage statement sitting in your inbox. It's time to stop romanticizing the debt and start prioritizing the life. Stop listening to your parents. Stop listening to your uncle who bought a house in 2012. Their advice is financial poison in 2026. The world has changed, but the buy a home at all costs script hasn't been updated. We are playing a high-stakes game of musical chairs with $500,000 on the line, and the music is about to stop. If you think 2026 is just another year to get on the property ladder, you aren't paying attention to the cracks in the foundation. Let's look at the affordability gap. Historically, the U.S. housing market stayed sane because home prices moved in tandem with wages. Not anymore. Since 2020, home prices have detached from reality like a rocket ship with no pilot. In 2026, we are seeing the widest gap between median income and median home price in American history. In the past, if you lost your job, you could pivot. In 2026, because you're buying at the absolute peak of a price-to-income bubble, you have zero margin for error. You are buying an asset that requires perfect economic conditions for the next 30 years just to break even. Does the world look perfect to you right now? Let's talk about the elephant in the room: career stability. In the 90s, a professional job was a fortress. In 2026, between AI integration and corporate efficiency waves, no white-collar job is safe. What happens to your $4,300 mortgage when your department is automated? What happens when remote work is revoked and you're stuck with a $500,000 house in a city where you no longer have a job? In 2026, your greatest asset is mobility. But a mortgage is the opposite of mobility, it's an anchor. If you're tied to a $500,000 debt in a shifting job market, you can't chase the next opportunity. You're a sitting duck in a talent war where the fast and the lean survive, and the house poor gets slaughtered. Then there's the recession fear. People say, homes always go up. Tell that to the people in 2008. In 2026, interest rates have stayed higher for longer, and the air is getting thin. If the U.S. economy catches a cold and housing prices dip just 10 or 15%, you are underwater. That means you owe the bank $475,000 on a house that's now worth $425,000. You can't sell it without cutting a check for $50,000 to the bank just to leave. You are effectively trapped in a depreciating asset while still paying peak market prices. In 2026, the risk isn't just not making money, the risk is being locked in a financial prison you can't afford to escape. Don't be fooled by the low inventory narrative. In 2026, we're seeing a standoff. Sellers are clinging to their 3% rates from the past, and buyers are being pushed to 7 or 8% rates. This is a frozen market. But markets don't stay frozen forever, they break. When the silver tsunami hits, as millions of baby boomers start downsizing or passing away, the market will be flooded with inventory that the struggling millennial can't afford. Buying a $500,000 house right now is like buying the last ticket on the Titanic because you're afraid there won't be another boat. Guess what? There are always more boats, but there's only one Atlantic Ocean, and it's freezing. Finally, look at the cost of capital. In 2026, borrowing $450,000 isn't cheap. Over 30 years, you will pay the bank more in interest than the actual value of the house. You are working 40 hours a week, but 25 of those hours are going directly into the pockets of Wall Street bankers. You aren't building a nest egg, you're funding a bank's quarterly earnings report. In 2026, the smartest move isn't owning at any cost, it's staying liquid, staying mobile, and waiting for the math to make sense again. Because right now, the math isn't just bad, it's predatory. Let's perform a mental exorcism. We need to kill the idea that your primary residence is an investment. In the US, we've been brainwashed to believe that paying a mortgage is building wealth while renting is throwing money away. This is the biggest financial lie of the 21st century. Your house is a liability that you live in. It doesn't put money in your pocket every month, it takes it out. Real wealth isn't measured by the height of your ceiling, it's measured by the depth of your freedom. In 2026, liquidity is king. When you dump $50,000 into a down payment, that money is dead. It's trapped in wood, brick, and mortar. You can't eat your drywall when you're hungry, and you can't pay for an emergency with your shingles. Compare that to liquid wealth. If that same $50,000 is in a diversified portfolio, S&P 500, high-yield bonds, or even a simple money market fund, it's alive. It's working for you 24/7. It's accessible in 48 hours. In a world that's changing faster than ever, having cash on hand is a superpower. Being house rich and cash poor is just a fancy way of saying you're a high-end beggar. Let's break the rent is trash myth. In many U.S. cities, The cost to own a $500,000 home, mortgage plus taxes plus insurance plus maintenance, is nearly double the cost of renting a similar property. If you rent for $2,500 and the cost to own is $4,500, you have a $2,000 monthly surplus. If you take that surplus and automate it into an investment account, you aren't throwing money away. You're buying your retirement 10 years early. While the homeowner is stressed about a leaking roof, you're compounding your wealth in the global economy. You aren't betting on one house in one neighborhood, you're betting on the top 500 companies in the world. Who do you think wins in the long run? Hint, it's not the guy with the 30-year debt contract. The biggest shift isn't just in your bank account, it's in your head. When you don't have a massive mortgage hanging over you like a guillotine, your risk tolerance changes. You can negotiate for a higher salary because you don't need the job to survive next month. You can sleep through the night because you know your cost of living is low and your savings rate is high. This is the wealth versus walls debate. Walls provide shelter, but wealth provides choice. In 2026, the American dream isn't about owning a piece of land, it's about owning your time. If your house forces you to work 50 hours a week at a job you hate, it's not an asset, it's an anchor. Stop worshiping the title deed and start worshiping the balance sheet. The market doesn't care about your nostalgia. It only cares about math. The paradigm shift happens when you realize that home is where you live, but wealth is how you live. You don't need to be a landlord to be rich, and you definitely don't need to be a slave to a bank to be successful. In 2026, the winners are the ones who stay light, stay liquid, and stay out of predatory debt. The goal isn't to have the biggest house on the block, it's to have the biggest foo fund in the bank. Because when the next economic storm hits, and it will, the walls won't save you. Your wealth will. Enough with the theory. You're in your 30s or 40s, you don't have another decade to wait and see. If the math for a $500,000 house in 2026 feels like a chokehold, it's because it is. But we don't just point out the fire, we give you the exit map. Here is your 4-step Sky Invests tactical plan to stop being a potential statistic and start being a wealth builder. First, ignore your mortgage broker. They get paid on the size of your debt, not the size of your retirement. Apply the 28% rule to your net income, not gross. If your total housing cost, mortgage, taxes, insurance, and the poverty tax, PMI, exceeds 28% of what actually hits your bank account, walk away. You aren't missing out on a house, you're opting out of a heart attack. If the numbers don't fit, you stay liquid and you keep renting. Period. In 2026, a $1,000 emergency fund is a joke. It won't even cover a plumbing leak. Before you even look at Zillow, you need 6 months of total expenses in a high-yield savings account. This is your foo fund. It's the only thing that keeps you from becoming a slave to a toxic job just to pay for your granite countertops. If you don't have this, you aren't ready to own, you're just ready to gamble. Build the floor before you try to buy the roof. Take the difference between what it costs to own that $500,000 house and what you pay in rent, and automate it. If renting saves you $1,500 a month, that money should be in a low-cost index fund, VTSAX or VO, before you even wake up on the first. You are arbitraging the housing bubble. While everyone else is praying for 3% home appreciation, you're capturing 8 to 10% in the global market. In 10 years, you'll have the cash to buy that house outright while your neighbors are still arguing about interest rates. Finally, stay mobile. The 2026 economy rewards the fast. If a better opportunity opens up in a lower-cost state or a different country, you need to be able to pack your bags in 30 days. Don't let a $500,000 anchor in a stagnant suburb kill your career trajectory. Renting isn't losing, it's buying flexibility. And in the age of AI and economic shifts, flexibility is the most expensive commodity on earth. The American dream isn't dead, it just moved. It moved from the white picket fence to the digital brokerage account. Stop playing the bank's game and start playing your own. Run your numbers, keep your freedom, and remember, walls provide shelter, but math provides a life. I'm Sky, and this is Sky Invests. Hit subscribe if you're ready to stop being house poor and start being actually wealthy. See you in the next one.